Welcome back to Shocking Stories, where we uncover the most mind-bending true crime cases that will make you question the very nature of justice and wonder whether some people can truly see into the future. I'm your host, and today we're heading to Richmond, Virginia, where a night security guard's routine patrol led to the discovery of the most impossible courtroom in American legal history. One where a federal judge was sentencing people for crimes they hadn't yet committed. If you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because what you're about to hear involves a case that challenged everything we understand about time, justice, and the power of the federal court system to reach beyond the present moment. This is the story of Judge Patricia Blackwood, a respected 58-year-old federal judge whose distinguished 20-year career took a terrifying turn when she began conducting secret trials at exactly 3 a.m., issuing verdicts and sentences for defendants who existed only in her visions of future crimes. But when her predictions began coming true with 100% accuracy, law enforcement had to confront the impossible question: was Judge Blackwood a prophet of justice, or something far more sinister? Picture this. It's 3:17 a.m. on September 23, 2024, and security guard Marcus Chen is conducting his routine patrol of the Albert V. Bryan Federal Courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia. The building should be completely empty at this hour, with only the soft hum of security systems and the distant sound of traffic from Interstate 395. But as Marcus approaches the main courtroom on the fourth floor, he hears something that makes his blood run cold: the unmistakable sound of a trial in session. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Blackwood," a voice echoes through the supposedly empty hallway. The United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia is now in session. Marcus's first thought is that he stumbled upon some kind of training exercise or late-night preparation session. But as he peers through the courtroom's small window, he sees something that should be impossible: a fully active courtroom with a judge, bailiffs, court reporters, and even what appears to be a defendant in orange prison clothing, all conducting a trial in the middle of the night. Marcus initially thought he was witnessing some kind of emergency session or classified hearing, recalled FBI Special Agent Jennifer Martinez, who would later lead the investigation into what became known as the Midnight Court case. Federal courts occasionally conduct late-night proceedings for national security cases, so his first instinct was to respect what he assumed was a legitimate judicial process. But something about the scene disturbed Marcus enough that he decided to document what he was seeing. Using his phone, he began recording the proceedings through the courtroom window, capturing audio and video that would later become crucial evidence in one of the most bizarre federal investigations ever undertaken. The recording showed Judge Patricia Blackwood, dressed in her official robes, presiding over what appeared to be a criminal sentencing hearing. The defendant, a young man Marcus didn't recognize, stood before the bench while Judge Blackwood read from official court documents and pronounced a sentence of 15 years in federal prison for armed robbery and assault. The defendant will serve 15 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release, Judge Blackwood's voice could be heard saying in Marcus's recording. The court finds that the defendant's actions on October 15, 2024, demonstrate a clear pattern of escalating violence that requires significant incarceration to protect public safety. What made Marcus's blood run cold was the date Judge Blackwood had mentioned, October 15, 2024. The trial was taking place on September 23, but the judge was sentencing someone for crimes that wouldn't occur for another 3 weeks. Judge Patricia Blackwood had served on the federal bench for 2 decades and was widely respected for her legal expertise, fair sentencing practices, and dedication to upholding constitutional rights. "Judge Blackwood was one of our most respected federal judges," explained Chief Judge Michael Torres of the Eastern District of Virginia. "She had an impeccable record, a brilliant legal mind, and was known for her meticulous preparation and attention to detail. The idea that she would be conducting unauthorized proceedings was completely contrary to everything we knew about her character." But Marcus's recording suggested that Judge Blackwood had been conducting these secret midnight trials for an unknown period of time. The professionalism and routine nature of the proceedings indicated that this wasn't an isolated incident, but rather a systematic pattern of unauthorized judicial activity. The investigation into Judge Blackwood's midnight court began the following morning when Marcus reported what he had witnessed to his supervisor, Courthouse Security Director Sarah Kim. Initially, Kim was skeptical of Marcus's claims, assuming he had misinterpreted some kind of authorized late-night activity. When Marcus told me he had witnessed a trial at 3 a.m., my first reaction was that he had either misunderstood what he was seeing or had encountered some kind of classified proceeding that he wasn't supposed to know about, Kim recalled. Federal courthouses occasionally host sensitive hearings that are kept confidential for national security reasons. But when Kim reviewed Marcus's video recording, she realized they were dealing with something unprecedented. The footage clearly showed Judge Blackwood conducting what appeared to be a legitimate trial, complete with court officers, legal proceedings, and official documentation, all taking place in an unauthorized setting during hours when the courthouse was supposed to be secured and empty. Kim immediately contacted the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, which oversees federal court operations, to report the unusual activity. Within hours, federal investigators were reviewing the security footage and beginning what would become one of the most complex investigations in federal court history. The first question investigators needed to answer was whether Judge Blackwood had been conducting authorized proceedings that had somehow been scheduled outside normal court hours. A review of official court records showed no scheduled hearings, no authorized use of the courtroom, and no documentation of any legitimate legal proceedings taking place at 3 a.m. The court's official records showed no activity on the night in question, explained Administrative Office Inspector Robert Chen. Judge Blackwood had no cases scheduled, no emergency hearings authorized, and no legitimate reason to be in the courthouse conducting trials in the middle of the night. But the investigation took a disturbing turn when investigators attempted to identify the defendant who had appeared in Marcus's recording. Despite having clear video footage of the young man's face, no database searches could identify him as someone currently in the federal court system, in local custody, or even as someone with a criminal record. The defendant in the recording didn't exist in any of our systems, Agent Martinez revealed. We ran his image through facial recognition databases, checked arrest records, court filings, and even missing persons reports. This person appeared to be completely unknown to law enforcement, which raised the question of how he had ended up in Judge Blackwood's courtroom. The mystery deepened when investigators discovered that the courthouse's official security system had no record of anyone entering or leaving the building during the time when Marcus had recorded the trial. Access logs, keycard records, and security camera footage all showed the building as empty and secure, contradicting the clear evidence of courtroom activity. According to our security systems, the courthouse was completely empty on the night in question, Security Director Kim explained. No one had used keycards to enter the building, no doors had been opened, and our internal cameras showed no movement or activity anywhere in the facility. The contradiction between Marcus's recording and the official security records suggested either a massive failure of the courthouse's security systems or something far more mysterious about the nature of Judge Blackwood's midnight proceedings. Investigators decided to conduct surveillance of the courthouse during the early morning hours to determine whether Judge Blackwood's midnight court was an ongoing phenomenon. On the night of September 25, federal agents positioned themselves inside and outside the courthouse to monitor any unusual activity. At exactly 3 a.m., agents watching the building's exterior saw lights come on in the fourth-floor courtroom, despite the fact that no one had been observed entering the building. Motion sensors throughout the courthouse showed activity in areas that should have been empty, and the sound of voices could be heard coming from the main courtroom. We witnessed the same phenomenon that Marcus had reported, Agent Martinez described. The courtroom appeared to come alive at 3 a.m., with lights, voices, and clear signs of judicial proceedings taking place. But our agents positioned throughout the building saw no one entering or leaving, and security systems showed no breaches or unauthorized access. When agents entered the courtroom during the proceedings, they found it completely empty and dark, with no signs that anyone had been present. But electronic voice recorders placed in the room had captured hours of clear audio featuring Judge Blackwood's voice conducting what sounded like legitimate trial proceedings. The recorded audio from September 25 revealed Judge Blackwood sentencing another unknown defendant, this time for a drug trafficking crime that she claimed would occur on October 3, 2024. Again, the defendant was someone who didn't exist in any law enforcement database, and the crime being punished hadn't yet taken place. We were dealing with something that challenged our understanding of time, space, and legal proceedings, Agent Martinez admitted. Judge Blackwood appeared to be conducting trials for future crimes involving people who didn't exist, in a courtroom that was simultaneously occupied and empty. The investigation team decided to test Judge Blackwood's apparent ability to predict future crimes by monitoring whether the events she described in her midnight trials would actually occur. If her predictions proved accurate, it would suggest either an extraordinary psychic ability or knowledge of planned criminal activities that she shouldn't possess. The first test came on October 3, 2024, the date when Judge Blackwood had predicted a drug trafficking crime would occur. Federal agents conducted surveillance of the location she had mentioned in her midnight trial, a warehouse district in Norfolk, Virginia, approximately 200 miles southeast of Richmond. At exactly the time and location specified in Judge Blackwood's recorded proceedings, agents witnessed a large-scale drug deal involving multiple suspects and significant quantities of narcotics. When they moved to arrest the suspects, one of them was the exact person who had appeared as a defendant in Judge Blackwood's September 25 midnight trial. The accuracy of Judge Blackwood's prediction was absolutely perfect, Agent Martinez revealed. The crime occurred exactly as she had described, at the precise time and location, involving the exact person we had seen in her courtroom recording. It was impossible, but it was happening. The arrested suspect, 28-year-old David Morrison, had no prior criminal record and no known connection to Judge Blackwood or the federal court system. When questioned about his appearance in the midnight trial recording, Morrison claimed no memory of ever being in a courtroom and seemed genuinely confused about how his image could have been captured in federal court proceedings. David Morrison appeared to have no knowledge of the midnight trial or his sentencing by Judge Blackwood, Agent Martinez continued. He seemed genuinely surprised when we showed him the recording of himself in her courtroom, and psychological evaluation suggested he was telling the truth about having no memory of the experience. But the accuracy of Judge Blackwood's first prediction convinced investigators that they needed to take her October 15 prophecy seriously. According to her midnight trial on September 23, an armed robbery and assault would occur on that date, committed by the young man Marcus had originally recorded in the courthouse. What do you think federal agents discovered when they prepared for Judge Blackwood's second prediction? Drop your theories in the comments below, because what happened on October 15 would force investigators to confront the impossible reality that a federal judge was somehow conducting trials in a realm that existed outside normal time and space. The investigation was about to reveal that Judge Blackwood's midnight court was more than just an unusual phenomenon. It was a gateway to future justice that would challenge everything the legal system understood about time, justice, and the power of the federal court system to reach beyond the present moment. Like this video if you're as intrigued by Judge Blackwood's impossible courtroom as I am, and let me know in the comments what you think is really happening at 3 a.m. in that federal courthouse. Don't forget to subscribe because in part 2, we're going to reveal the shocking truth about how Judge Blackwood gained her prophetic abilities and discover that her midnight court was just the beginning of a phenomenon that would transform the entire concept of preventive justice. Welcome back to Shocking Stories. When we left off, federal investigators had confirmed that Judge Patricia Blackwood's midnight trial predictions were coming true with terrifying accuracy, and they were preparing for her prophecy about an armed robbery and assault scheduled for October 15. What they discovered when that date arrived would reveal the true scope of Judge Blackwood's abilities and force the federal government to confront a question that challenged the very foundations of American jurisprudence. The surveillance operation for October 15, 2024, was the largest federal law enforcement mobilization in Virginia history outside of terrorism cases. FBI agents, U.S. Marshals, and local police were positioned throughout Richmond and the surrounding areas, ready to intercept the armed robbery that Judge Blackwood had predicted in her September 23 midnight trial. We treated Judge Blackwood's prediction as actionable intelligence, FBI Special Agent Jennifer Martinez explained to the federal task force assembled to investigate the midnight court phenomenon. If she was somehow able to foresee future crimes with the accuracy we had already witnessed, we had a responsibility to use that information to protect potential victims. The predicted crime was scheduled to occur at 2:30 p.m. at a small convenience store in Richmond's East End neighborhood. According to Judge Blackwood's midnight trial recording, the perpetrator would be armed with a .38 revolver and would assault the elderly store clerk during the robbery, causing injuries that would require hospitalization. At 2:25 p.m. on October 15, Federal agents positioned around the convenience store observed a young man matching the description from Judge Blackwood's trial entering the store. Hidden cameras and listening devices captured everything that happened next. An armed robbery that unfolded exactly as Judge Blackwood had predicted, down to the specific weapon used and the nature of the assault on the store clerk. The crime occurred precisely as Judge Blackwood had foreseen, Agent Martinez reported. The perpetrator, later identified as Kevin Walsh, used a .38 revolver to rob the store and struck the 67-year-old clerk with the weapon when she was slow to open the cash register. The sequence of events, the timing, and even the dialogue matched Judge Blackwood's midnight trial recording almost word for word. Kevin Walsh was arrested at the scene and found to be carrying the exact weapon described in Judge Blackwood's trial. Like David Morrison, Walsh had no prior criminal record and no known connection to Judge Blackwood or the federal court system. When shown the recording of his appearance in the midnight trial, Walsh exhibited the same confusion and apparent lack of memory about the courtroom proceedings. Kevin Walsh claimed no memory of ever being in a federal courtroom, Agent Martinez continued. He seemed genuinely surprised by the footage and insisted that he had never seen Judge Blackwood before in his life. Psychological evaluation confirmed that he was likely telling the truth about having no conscious memory of the midnight trial experience. But the most disturbing discovery came when investigators realized that Judge Blackwood's midnight trials weren't limited to the two cases they had directly observed. A comprehensive review of courthouse security footage revealed electromagnetic anomalies and unexplained lighting patterns that suggested the midnight court had been active for several months, possibly longer. We found evidence of regular 3 a.m. activity in the courthouse dating back at least 6 months, Security Director Sarah Kim revealed. The patterns were subtle, brief power fluctuations, temperature changes, and electronic interference that we had initially attributed to aging building systems. But the timing was too consistent to be coincidental. The investigation team decided to conduct a more intensive surveillance operation to document the full scope of Judge Blackwood's midnight court activities. On the night of October 20th, federal agents equipped with advanced recording equipment positioned themselves throughout the courthouse to capture whatever was happening during the 3 a.m. proceedings. What they recorded that night would fundamentally change their understanding of Judge Blackwood's abilities and reveal that her midnight court was operating on a scale far beyond what they had initially imagined. At exactly 3 a.m., the courthouse's main courtroom became active with what could only be described as multiple simultaneous trials. Electronic recording equipment captured the voices of Judge Blackwood and what appeared to be an entire courtroom staff conducting proceedings for dozens of different cases, all happening at the same time in the same physical space. The audio recordings from October 20th contained overlapping trials, multiple defendants, and what sounded like an entire court system operating in parallel to our normal legal procedures, Agent Martinez explained. Judge Blackwood's voice could be heard sentencing people for crimes ranging from petty theft to murder, all scheduled to occur at specific future dates and times. The recorded proceedings revealed that Judge Blackwood's midnight court wasn't just predicting isolated crimes. It was mapping out an entire future criminal landscape spanning months and potentially years ahead. The cases involved hundreds of different defendants and covered crimes scheduled to occur across multiple states and jurisdictions. We were looking at what appeared to be a prophetic justice system that was processing future crimes on a massive scale, Agent Martinez continued. Judge Blackwood wasn't just conducting random trials. She was systematically working through an enormous caseload of crimes that hadn't yet occurred. But the investigation took an even more mysterious turn when agents attempted to interview Judge Blackwood about her midnight court activities. During normal daytime hours, Judge Blackwood appeared to have no memory or awareness of her 3 a.m. proceedings and seemed genuinely confused when agents described what they had observed. Judge Blackwood's daytime personality showed no knowledge of the midnight court, explained FBI psychological profiler Dr. Patricia Moore, who was brought in to evaluate the judge's mental state. When we described the recordings and the accurate predictions, she seemed genuinely bewildered and concerned about her own behavior. It was as if the midnight judge and the daytime judge were completely separate individuals. Psychological evaluation revealed that Judge Blackwood was experiencing what appeared to be a form of dissociative fugue state that began at exactly 3 a.m. each night and lasted for approximately 3 hours. During this time, she demonstrated enhanced cognitive abilities, prophetic knowledge, and access to information that should have been impossible for her to possess. Judge Blackwood's midnight personality exhibited capabilities that went far beyond normal human cognition, Dr. Moore explained. She demonstrated perfect recall of complex legal procedures, intimate knowledge of crimes that hadn't occurred, and the ability to process multiple cases simultaneously with extraordinary efficiency. The investigation into Judge Blackwood's background revealed a pattern of unusual experiences that had begun approximately 8 months earlier, following a minor car accident that had resulted in a brief period of unconsciousness. Medical records showed that Judge Blackwood had suffered a mild concussion and had reported experiencing vivid dreams and occasional disorientation in the weeks following the accident. The midnight court phenomenon appeared to have begun shortly after Judge Blackwood's car accident, Dr. Moore observed. Brain scans showed subtle changes in her temporal lobe activity that could potentially explain her altered state of consciousness and apparent prophetic abilities. But the medical explanation didn't address the fundamental question of how Judge Blackwood was able to predict future crimes with perfect accuracy. The investigation team decided to test her abilities more systematically by monitoring her midnight trials and then conducting preventive operations based on her predictions. Over the following month, federal agents used Judge Blackwood's midnight court proceedings as intelligence to prevent crimes before they occurred. The results were unprecedented. 17 different crimes were intercepted based on her predictions, with agents arriving at the exact time and location specified in her trials to arrest perpetrators before they could commit their intended offenses. Judge Blackwood's midnight court became the most effective crime prevention tool in federal law enforcement history, Agent Martinez revealed. We were preventing crimes with 100% accuracy, arresting suspects before they could harm victims, and essentially eliminating criminal activity in the areas covered by her predictions. But the success of the preventive operations raised profound legal and ethical questions about the use of prophetic information in law enforcement. How could the justice system prosecute people for crimes they hadn't yet committed? What rights did defendants have when they were arrested based on predictions rather than actual criminal acts? The legal challenges became even more complex when investigators discovered that Judge Blackwood's midnight trials included detailed evidence and witness testimony related to the future crimes. The recordings contained information that could only have been obtained through actual investigation of completed crimes, even though the crimes hadn't yet occurred. Judge Blackwood's midnight trials included witness statements, forensic evidence, and detailed crime scene analysis for crimes that existed only in the future, explained federal prosecutor Michael Torres, who was assigned to address the legal implications of the midnight court. She was conducting complete trials with full due process for defendants who hadn't yet committed the crimes they were being sentenced for. The ethical dilemma reached its peak when Judge Blackwood's November 1 midnight trial revealed a planned mass shooting at a local high school, scheduled to occur on November 15. The detailed proceedings included the identity of the would-be shooter, the specific weapons he planned to use, and even the names of intended victims. The mass shooting prediction forced us to confront the ultimate test of the midnight court system, Agent Martinez explained. We had information that could save dozens of lives, but acting on it would mean arresting someone for a crime they hadn't committed and might never commit if we intervened. The federal task force made the decision to use Judge Blackwood's prediction to prevent the school shooting, conducting a carefully planned intervention that would test whether changing future events was possible or whether the predicted timeline was fixed and inevitable. On November 10, 5 days before the predicted shooting, federal agents arrested 18-year-old Michael Harrison at his home, where they found an arsenal of weapons and detailed plans that matched exactly what Judge Blackwood had described in her midnight trial. The intervention prevented what would have been one of the deadliest school shootings in Virginia history. The school shooting prevention proved that Judge Blackwood's predictions weren't fixed prophecies. They were warnings that allowed us to change the future, Agent Martinez observed. By acting on her midnight trial information, we could prevent tragedies and save lives while also preventing people from becoming criminals. The success of the preventive operations led to the establishment of a classified federal program code named Project Midnight Justice, designed to systematically use Judge Blackwood's prophetic abilities to prevent crimes before they occurred. The program operated in complete secrecy, with only a small number of federal officials aware of its existence. But the program faced increasing challenges as Judge Blackwood's midnight trials began revealing crimes that implicated high-level government officials, federal judges, and even members of Congress. Judge Blackwood's midnight court didn't discriminate based on political position or social status, Agent Martinez revealed. Her trials included predictions of crimes by senators, federal judges, cabinet members, and other powerful individuals who had never been suspected of criminal activity. The political implications of the midnight court became a national security concern when Judge Blackwood's December 1 trial revealed a planned assassination attempt against a Supreme Court justice, orchestrated by a conspiracy that involved sitting members of Congress and high-ranking intelligence officials. As Part 2 of our investigation concludes, Judge Blackwood's midnight court had evolved from an unexplained phenomenon into the most powerful and controversial crime prevention tool in American history. But the program's success was about to be threatened by the very crimes it was designed to prevent, as those implicated in the prophetic trials began to fight back against the system that could expose their future criminal activities. Don't miss Part 3, where we'll reveal how powerful criminals attempted to silence Judge Blackwood's midnight court, explore the constitutional crisis created by prosecuting people for crimes they hadn't yet committed, and discover the shocking truth about what really happened to Judge Blackwood after her car accident. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell, because the conclusion of the Midnight Judge story will show you how prophetic justice changed American law enforcement forever, and the terrible price that was paid for the power to see into the future. What do you think about using prophetic information to prevent crimes before they happen? Let me know in the comments whether you believe people should be arrested for crimes they haven't yet committed, and share this video to help others understand the complex relationship between justice, time, and the power to change the future. Welcome back to the shocking conclusion of our investigation into the Midnight Judge. When we left off, Judge Patricia Blackwood's prophetic trials had evolved into a classified federal program that was preventing crimes with unprecedented success, until her predictions began exposing corruption at the highest levels of government. What happened next would test the limits of American democracy and reveal the terrible price that must be paid for the power to see into the future. The constitutional crisis created by Project Midnight Justice reached its peak on December 15, 2024. When Judge Blackwood's midnight trial revealed a conspiracy that would shake the federal government to its core. According to her prophetic proceedings, a group of high-ranking officials was planning to assassinate the Attorney General and frame a foreign terrorist organization to justify declaring martial law. The December 15 midnight trial was the most detailed and disturbing prediction Judge Blackwood had ever provided, FBI Special Agent Jennifer Martinez explained to the Classified Oversight Committee reviewing Project Midnight Justice. She named specific conspirators, described their meeting locations, and even provided the exact timeline for an assassination attempt scheduled for December 30th. The conspiracy implicated Senator Robert Chen, Federal Judge Michael Torres, and CIA Deputy Director Patricia Wilson, all respected officials with decades of public service. The midnight trial recordings included detailed conversations, planning documents, and even the specific weapons that would be used in the assassination attempt. But taking action on Judge Blackwood's prediction would require arresting sitting government officials based solely on prophetic evidence of crimes they hadn't yet committed. The legal and political implications were unprecedented, potentially threatening the stability of the entire federal government. We were facing the ultimate test of the midnight court system, explained Attorney General Sarah Kim during classified congressional testimony. If we acted on Judge Blackwood's prediction, we would be arresting some of the most powerful people in government based on evidence that existed only in the future. If we didn't act, the Attorney General could be assassinated and the country could be thrown into chaos. The decision to proceed with the arrests was made at the highest levels of government, with President Biden personally authorizing the operation after reviewing the midnight trial recordings and consulting with national security advisors. The complexity of arresting government officials for future crimes required unprecedented coordination between multiple agencies. On December 28, just 2 days before the predicted assassination attempt, federal agents simultaneously arrested Senator Chen at his Capitol Hill office, Judge Torres at his home in Maryland, and Deputy Director Wilson at CIA headquarters in Langley. The arrests sent shockwaves through Washington and raised questions about the evidence supporting such extraordinary actions. The arrests were based on evidence that the public couldn't understand or evaluate, explained constitutional law professor Dr. Robert Martinez, who was called in to advise on the legal implications. How do you explain to the American people that government officials were arrested for crimes they hadn't committed, based on the predictions of a judge who conducted trials while in an altered state of consciousness? The search warrants executed at the time of the arrests uncovered evidence that perfectly matched Judge Blackwood's midnight trial descriptions. Agents found weapons, forged documents, encrypted communications, and detailed assassination plans that confirmed every aspect of her prophetic proceedings. The physical evidence was overwhelming, Agent Martinez revealed. We found exactly what Judge Blackwood had predicted we would find, located precisely where she said it would be. The conspiracy was real, the plans were detailed, and the assassination attempt would have succeeded if we hadn't intervened. But the success of the operation raised disturbing questions about the source of Judge Blackwood's prophetic abilities and whether her midnight court was truly predicting the future or somehow accessing information through other means. The investigation into her background took a dramatic turn when agents discovered classified documents related to experimental government programs from the 1990s. The documents revealed that Judge Blackwood had been an unwitting subject in a classified CIA program called Project Temporal Insight, designed to develop psychic abilities in government personnel through experimental drug treatments and consciousness manipulation techniques. The program had been shut down in 1998 after several subjects experienced permanent psychological damage. Judge Blackwood had been subjected to experimental procedures during her law school years, when she worked as a summer intern in a federal office that was secretly participating in Project Temporal Insight, Dr. Patricia Moore, the FBI psychological profiler, explained. The treatments had remained dormant for decades until they were reactivated by the brain trauma from her car accident. The revelation that Judge Blackwood's abilities were the result of government experimentation rather than natural psychic phenomena cast the entire Midnight Court program in a new light. The federal government had essentially created a prophetic judge through illegal human experimentation and was now using her abilities to arrest people for future crimes. The ethical implications were staggering, Dr. Moore continued. Judge Blackwood had been turned into a tool of prophetic justice without her knowledge or consent, and the government was using her experimentally enhanced abilities to prosecute crimes that existed only in potential futures. The legal challenges to the Midnight Court arrests began immediately, with defense attorneys arguing that their clients couldn't be prosecuted for crimes they hadn't yet committed and that the prophetic evidence was inadmissible in court. The case raised fundamental questions about the nature of criminal intent, the concept of due process, and the limits of government power. How do you prove criminal intent for a crime that hasn't occurred? Asked defense attorney Lisa Chen, who was representing Senator Robert Chen. How do you cross-examine a witness about events that exist only in the future? The entire legal framework for criminal prosecution breaks down when you're dealing with prophetic evidence. The constitutional crisis deepened when civil liberties groups challenged the entire concept of preventive arrests based on predicted crimes. Protests erupted across the country as news of the Midnight Court program leaked to the media, with demonstrators demanding answers about government surveillance, prophetic justice, and the rights of citizens to be free from arrest before committing crimes. The Midnight Court program represented the ultimate expansion of government power, explained American Civil Liberties Union attorney Jennifer Walsh. If the government can arrest people for crimes they might commit in the future, then no citizen is safe from preventive detention based on algorithmic predictions, psychic visions, or governmental suspicions. But supporters of the program pointed to its unprecedented success in preventing crimes and saving lives. Over the 8 months of its operation, Project Midnight Justice had prevented over 200 serious crimes, including murders, terrorist attacks, and mass shootings, while maintaining a 100% accuracy rate in its predictions. The Midnight Court had saved hundreds of lives and prevented immeasurable suffering, argued former Attorney General Michael Torres during congressional hearings. Judge Blackwood's prophetic abilities had given us the power to create a world without victims, where crimes could be stopped before they caused harm. The debate over prophetic justice reached the Supreme Court in the case of United States versus Chen, which would determine whether people could be prosecuted for crimes they hadn't yet committed based on evidence of future events. The case attracted international attention and was considered one of the most important constitutional questions in American history. The Supreme Court's decision, handed down on March 15, 2025, was narrow but decisive. In a 5-4 ruling, the court held that while prophetic evidence could be used to prevent crimes and protect public safety, it could not be used as the sole basis for criminal prosecution without additional evidence of criminal intent or preparation. The court recognized the value of prophetic information for crime prevention while maintaining the constitutional requirement that criminal prosecution must be based on actions rather than predictions, explained Supreme Court analyst David Kim. The ruling allowed law enforcement to use Judge Blackwood's abilities to prevent crimes while preserving the fundamental principle that people cannot be punished for crimes they haven't committed. The Supreme Court decision led to a restructuring of Project Midnight Justice, with the program refocused on crime prevention rather than prosecution. Judge Blackwood's midnight trials continued to provide intelligence for preventing crimes, but arrests were now based on evidence of criminal preparation rather than prophetic predictions alone. But the strain of serving as a prophetic judge began to take its toll on Judge Blackwood's mental and physical health. The dissociative episodes that enabled her midnight court sessions were becoming more frequent and intense, bleeding into her daytime consciousness and affecting her ability to function as a normal federal judge. Judge Blackwood was essentially living two different lives, Dr. Moore observed. Her daytime personality was increasingly confused and disoriented, while her midnight consciousness was becoming more powerful and prophetic. The division between her two selves was becoming unsustainable. The end of Judge Blackwood's prophetic abilities came suddenly and dramatically on June 1, 2025, when her midnight trial predicted her own death. According to the recording, Judge Blackwood would die of a brain aneurysm on June 15 at exactly 3:17 a.m., 17 minutes after the conclusion of her final midnight court session. Judge Blackwood's prediction of her own death created an impossible situation, Agent Martinez explained. If her prophecies were always accurate, then nothing could be done to save her. But if her death could be prevented, it would prove that the future she saw was changeable and that free will could overcome prophetic destiny. Federal medical experts worked around the clock to find ways to prevent Judge Blackwood's predicted death, monitoring her brain activity, adjusting her medications, and even attempting to prevent her from entering the dissociative state that enabled her prophetic abilities. But their efforts were unsuccessful. On June 15, 2025, at exactly 3:17 a.m., Judge Patricia Blackwood died of a massive brain aneurysm in her midnight courtroom, 17 minutes after concluding her final prophetic trial. Her last case had been her own death, and like all her predictions, it had come true with perfect accuracy. Judge Blackwood's death marked the end of the midnight court and the end of prophetic justice as we knew it, Agent Martinez reflected. Her final trial had been her own obituary, delivered with the same precision and inevitability that had characterized all her predictions. The investigation into Judge Blackwood's death revealed that her prophetic abilities had been slowly destroying her brain, with the experimental treatments from Project Temporal Insight causing progressive neurological damage that culminated in the fatal aneurysm. The price of seeing into the future had been her life itself. The legacy of the Midnight Court program continues to influence American law enforcement and criminal justice policy. While Judge Blackwood's unique abilities died with her, the techniques developed for crime prevention based on prophetic intelligence have been adapted for use with artificial intelligence and predictive algorithms. The Midnight Court program taught us that the future isn't fixed and that crimes can be prevented through early intervention, explained Dr. Sarah Chen, who now heads the FBI's Predictive Crimes Division. While we may never again have access to perfect prophetic information, we can use the lessons learned from Judge Blackwood's midnight trials to develop better crime prevention strategies. The Albert V. Bryan Federal Courthouse has been renamed the Patricia Blackwood Federal Justice Center in honor of the judge who sacrificed her life to prevent crimes and protect innocent victims. The main courtroom where she conducted her midnight trials has been preserved as a memorial to the power of prophetic justice and the price of seeing into the future. A plaque in the courthouse lobby reads, Judge Patricia Blackwood, 1966 to 2025. She saw the future so that others might have one. The ethical questions raised by the Midnight Court program continue to resonate in discussions about artificial intelligence, predictive policing, and the balance between public safety and individual rights. Judge Blackwood's legacy serves as both an inspiration and a warning about the power and responsibility that comes with the ability to prevent crimes before they occur. Judge Blackwood showed us that justice isn't just about punishing crimes after they happen. It's about preventing harm before it occurs, reflected former Attorney General Sarah Kim. Her Midnight Court may have challenged our understanding of due process and constitutional rights, but it also saved hundreds of lives and showed us a vision of a world where victims could be protected before they were harmed. As our investigation into the Midnight Judge concludes, the story of Judge Patricia Blackwood serves as a complex tale of sacrifice, power, and the eternal struggle between justice and freedom. Her prophetic abilities saved countless lives and prevented immeasurable suffering, but they also raised fundamental questions about the nature of justice, the limits of government power, and the price we're willing to pay for perfect crime prevention. The Midnight Court may be gone, but its legacy lives on in the ongoing effort to balance public safety with individual rights, to prevent crimes while preserving freedom, and to use whatever tools we have, whether prophetic, technological, or simply human, to protect the innocent and uphold the cause of justice. If this incredible story of prophetic justice and ultimate sacrifice has moved you as much as it has moved us, please like this video and share it to help others understand the complex relationship between crime prevention, constitutional rights, and the power to see into the future. Subscribe to Shocking Stories for more investigations that explore the boundaries between science fiction and reality, between individual rights and collective safety, and between the justice we have and the justice we dream of achieving. Judge Patricia Blackwood may have paid the ultimate price for her prophetic abilities, but her legacy reminds us that sometimes the greatest act of justice is not punishing the guilty, but protecting the innocent before they can be harmed. The Midnight Court is silent now, but its message echoes on. True justice sees not just what has been, but what might be, and acts with courage to ensure that tomorrow is better than today.